The next time you watch a movie or read a book or listen to a piece of music, there's some basic elements that you'll find in these movies or these videos or the book or the musical piece. And some of these movies, there are many of them. You could pick your favorite movie if you'd like. I'm going to mention a few PG movies. One is the Lego Movie. The other is Finding Nemo, maybe Toy Story, or maybe the Baby Yoda Grogu series. In any of these movies, you're going to find those different elements. I'm just going to focus on four main elements. The first has to do with what we call the humble beginnings. The opening, or the advent of the story. And then secondly, you'll find that the characters are doing their ordinary moments of their mission. It's an ordinary time in the movie. The third is that there is a sad part or an agonizing part where even the character dies at the end. But the fourth part is the story doesn't end there in all these movies, because what happens is there's some victorious comeback, a resurrection, an Easter victory. So the humble beginnings, the ordinary time of the mission, the agony or a type of Lent moment, and a comeback moment. And I mention this because in today's gospel, Jesus talks to us and he preaches us and he teaches us about the vineyard. The vineyard, it's pronounced different ways. And what we want to do is focus on what's essential to our spiritual life in this gospel passage. Why are we talking about a vineyard? What's a vineyard? You take grapes, you plant the grapes, and they grow. We live next to Napa County, which is wine country, where there's lots of vineyards around Vallejo. And so in these different moments in our spiritual life, it isn't just looking at the vineyard from afar. You are the vineyard. You and I are the vineyard in the gospel passage because we are called to cultivate, to tend to the vineyard. We have to make it grow and bear fruit. And what we do with a vineyard, as we hear in today's gospel, is if it's so precious, like a precious little pearl of great price, we put a hedge around it, we put a fortress, a watchtower, we might put a moat to make sure the enemies don't get to it. I mean, it's kind of like what's the lottery ticket up to nowadays? Like 1.4 billion? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine having that? What are you going to do if you have that lottery ticket? You're not going to just leave it in your purse, right? Or leave it on the floor. You're going to put a security guard to it. You're going to get accountants. You're going to build a fort around that because it's so precious. How much more true is it for your eternal soul, which is more precious than the vineyard or the lotto ticket? How much more precious is that? The vineyard of the Lord is the house of Israel, as we heard in today's responsorial psalm. You are the vineyard of the Lord. Let those with ears listen. Because it's that vineyard that we hear in today's gospel that is what we're supposed to cultivate our souls with. And it's not just a movie or an ordinary book or a science fiction book or just another song. It's the story of salvation. It's what Jesus did in the Gospels. Because even in the Gospels, Jesus had his humble beginnings. He had his Advent moment when he was conceived or brought forth, incarnated in the womb of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And then there's some moments in the Gospel where we can reflect on this. We can reflect on the moment from the Annunciation down to when Jesus was 12 years old and we found him in the temple, teaching the smartest people in the temple. And then we have his hidden life. And then Jesus grows up to become 30 years old, and from the age of 30 to 33, he has his mission. It's an ordinary moment of teaching, preaching, and healing people. It's what he's called to do. It's his mystery of light. It's luminous. It enlightens us. And then when Jesus hits the age of 33, he is crucified, buried, and we think that's the end of the story. But it's not, because he literally rises from the dead with a glorified body. Not just in our hearts, or not just figuratively. His body that died on the cross rose from the dead 3 days later in a glorious way. And then we see the ascension and the coming of the Holy Spirit. And at the end of this, Mary is you are crowned at the end of this story. Like Mary. We are in the image of Mary. And so Mary is crowned at the end of this mystery. I just summarized the whole New Testament for you. And we can do this with this being the month of October, the month of the Holy Rosary, because the Rosary is a summary of the gospel. That's all that is. It is the vineyard of the Lord. It is how we can cultivate our soul by meditating on the mysteries of the Rosary, because in the Rosary mysteries, there are joyful mysteries, there are mysteries of light, there are sorrowful mysteries, and there are glorious mysteries. Kind of like in those movies I talked about. You know, in the Lego movie, there's Emmett. He has his ordinary life. He goes through something sad. He dies at the end of the story for Legoland, and then he comes back. The same thing with Finding Nemo. Nemo is born. Nemo has a life, goes to school. He then tries to find his dad. That's a sad moment. And then it looks like he dies, but he doesn't. He comes back. The Toy Story movie, Grogu, any story, you see these themes from the Creator. And this is important for us because our vineyard in our souls is most cultivated with the Holy Liturgy, the Holy Mass. And that's why it's important to plan our day around Sunday Mass, our week around Sunday Mass, our year around Sunday Mass. And we do that with a liturgical calendar. And this being the years of the Eucharistic revival, this is how we can live our Catholic Christian faith year-round. Because in the gospel stories, in our liturgical life, we start with the season of Advent. Usually that's around December, and that's when Jesus is born. And then we have ordinary time, where Jesus lives his life in the church. So the church follows this pattern because Jesus did. And then the church has Lent, the sorrowful mysteries. And then the Holy Week, the crucifixion of Jesus on Good Friday. And then the church has Easter. And it doesn't end there, because Jesus rose from the dead at Easter. And he ascended into heaven and sent the Spirit on us. And then the liturgical year ends with the Feast of Christ the King, where it's not just Jesus being crowned, you are going to be crowned. Let those with ears listen. And so when we pray the Holy Rosary this month of October, it's not just focusing on someone that's not Jesus, it's focusing on the life of Jesus himself. So for example, I take this part and I pray the Creed. I'll pray the Our Father for the Pope, 3 Hail Marys, and then this first set of 10 beads, I will pray an Our Father and 10 Hail Marys, and I'll think about the mystery. So if it's today, I'll think about the first glorious mystery is the resurrection. And you know, when I became closer to the church in my teenage years, and this goes for the Catholic school kids especially, I started learning more about church and getting involved with church more. I remember keeping the rosary in my pocket, my right pocket, because it was a type of a spiritual weapon. And I carried it around with me ever since, all these years. And the rosary is a way for us to show that the gospel is something that we meditate on. And we can do this even when we're driving. We're not necessarily holding the beads. We're like, holding the steering wheel. You're going, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Or Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. If you haven't prayed the rosary, I invite you to consider that this month of October, even if it was just like one decade. Give it a shot. Give it a shot. Because we know that today, as Father mentioned at the beginning of Mass, our world is in a bit of turmoil. It's a bit of type of tribulation, if you will. We have a situation in Ukraine, and now Israel is going through some turmoil, and Taiwan and many other parts of the world. And in the church's history, it was the rosary that helped us bring world peace. It helped us to bring stability. Anytime the Christians in Rome had a problem with plagues or pandemics or war or invasion, they turned to the mother of Jesus. Because my mother wears combat boots, Mary. Really, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, if you think about it. And we don't worship her, we honor her like what Jesus would do. WWJD. What would Jesus do? Jesus would follow the fourth commandment, which is honor your father and mother. So Jesus would honor his mother. And we honor our mother with the Holy Rosary. I'd love to hear Miss America, and I hope someday our kids, our graduates, go on to do great things for the world and the church. And maybe one of those people will be a candidate for Miss America or Miss Universe. And I'd love to hear Miss Universe or Miss America say, yes, I'd love to bring about, how will you bring about world peace? What do you want to do for the world? And she says, world peace through praying the Holy Rosary. And there's a story in World War II where there were 6 Jesuit priests praying in Nagasaki. And when the atom bomb dropped right above them, they were in the middle of praying the Rosary. And when the atomic bomb went off, it killed everybody around Nagasaki, including radiation sickness. But those 6 Jesuit priests that were praying the Rosary, they survived that bomb blast. Can you believe that? They didn't get radiation sickness. They died of natural old age. And we attribute that to the power of the Rosary. The family that prays together stays together. And we see this with the Battle of Lepanto, where Pius V, the Pope 500 years ago, knew that Europe was going to be invaded. And he said to everybody, take out your rosaries and we're going to pray the Rosary. And Don Juan of Austria in the smaller navy defeated a much larger navy. In the first centuries of Christianity, whenever there was disaster in Rome, the Christians there would turn to their mother of perpetual help. And so with all this talk about whether we're in World War III or we're leading up to it, this is where we calm our anxieties. Like we hear this from the second reading from Paul's letter to the Philippians. And in the letter to the Philippians, he writes, put your anxiety at ease. Put your anxiety at ease. Because whatever is good, whatever is noble, whatever is truthful, whatever is just, all of these, let's celebrate what's good. The fact that you're here in church today, let's celebrate that. And so, dear brothers and sisters, in a particular way, thank you for sending your kids to St. Catherine's School. You know you have many choices. And I've heard a lot of great stories from the kids. I was just talking to some of the 8th graders right before Mass about their plans. Great plans. And so may this time at St. Catherine's School be for you like the first reading from the book of the prophet Isaiah, where it's written, "Let me tell my friend about the vineyard." Who is my friend? Not me. The Lord is your friend. And the Lord is talking about you in the first reading. And he's saying to you, not just the kids at our schools, but also to the parents, let Sunday Mass be the center of this vineyard. Because for us as dads and fathers, did you know that when the dad goes to church, the kids, statistically speaking, have a higher chance of going to church as well and having those characters reinforced in their lives? And so if we have the vineyard of the dad and the father figure involved with the life of the parish, I warmly invite the dads here to do that at St. Catherine's School. What can we do to help the school out? It's the vineyard there that needs to be cultivated. And it's the vineyard so that you can go to heaven, your spouse help her or him go to heaven, and then your children go to heaven, and then your friends and extended family members, and then the community go to heaven, everybody else. The vineyard of the Lord is the house of Israel. And so if the vineyard of the Lord is the house of Israel, that means our Sunday Mass becomes the center of our life. It's like planning, a football game on Sunday. Well, the game is, from 1 to 4. You might want to consider going to Mass earlier. Or you have work that Sunday, plan Mass the previous evening, Saturday evening. Or if the kids have an activity that Sunday or a game that Sunday, is there a way to plan Mass around it? And I get we can't, every Sunday is different and it depends on the family schedule. But this is to show the importance of cultivating Sunday Mass, vacations and travel plans. How can we include Mass or even the Rosary in those plans to fulfill our vocation? And especially for us husbands and fathers, I want to give a word of encouragement to us. A real man bends his knee to Jesus Christ. And the fact that you're here, like St. Paul says in the second reading, there's a reason for that, isn't there? It shows that there's something here where I want to build my spiritual life with God. So let's celebrate that, dear brothers and sisters. And just like the humble beginnings, the ordinary times, the sad moments, and the glorious moments, all of us will have those in our life. And that's how we will cultivate the vineyard of the Lord in our own lives. As Deacon Bobby likes to say, the greatest homily that you will ever give, brothers, is to bring your family to Mass, the Eucharist, to feed them for eternity. And they will love you in heaven for all eternity for bringing them to heaven. The vineyard of the Lord is the house of Israel.
Together we confess our prayer. I believe in God.